You're listening to Systemic Error Podcast. The failure was designed.
Supreme Court feud just put Trump's plan in jeopardy. Legal analyst, based on an article by Alito and Clarence. The court's Vanity plays cover for real power, a brief source of context. A legal podcast turned a Supreme Court exchange into a personality story. Samuel Alito and Sonia Sotomayor clashed over an asylum case, and commentators speculated that Donald Trump is hoping Alito and Clarence Thomas leave the court so he can fill their seats before the midterms. That is the surface drama. The real story is the institution using life tenure, hard right power, and immigration cruelty as if none of it has a political design. The power is already where it hurts. The people with actual institutional power here are not the pundits, and not Trump's wish list. It is the justices themselves, especially the conservative bloc, that can convert a majority into policy with no electoral accountability. Alito did not merely enter into a dispute with Sotomayor. He authored the majority opinion in an asylum case. That is the machinery. The court decides who gets protection, who gets expelled, and whose suffering counts as legally irrelevant. Sotomayor's dissent, calling the court heartless and invoking the ship of Holocaust survivors, was not theatrics. It was a charge that the institution was laundering cruelty through procedure. If that is the dispute, then the real issue is not tone. It is what kind of harm the court is willing to normalize. Trump wants seats, not principles. Trump's interest in Alito and Thomas retiring early is nakedly transactional. He wants vacancies because vacancies are power. A new justice or two before the midterms would let him deepen the court's right-wing lock on the country long after his own political standing changes. That is the basic logic of judicial capture. Elections are temporary. Appointments are durable. The stories focus on whether Alito feels personally needed, risks flattering him into the role of independent actor. He is not just an ego in robes. He is part of a structure where lifetime tenure turns personal ideology into permanent governance. Misdirection by personality. The podcast framing leans on interpersonal drama because it is easier to sell than institutional accountability. Wacko interaction, ego, counterweight mantle. All of it turns a case about asylum and a court about power into a psychodrama among elite jurists. That is a familiar dodge. It makes outcomes look like mood swings instead of deliberate judicial choices. This is how the system protects itself. It recasts hard decisions as temperament, cruelty as jurisprudence, and political strategy as succession gossip. Meanwhile, the consequence lands on people seeking asylum, who are treated as a legal abstraction while the justices perform their status struggle in public. What the story actually reveals, the larger pattern, is not that the court is divided. It is that the court is a political weapon dressed up as a neutral institution, and the weapon is still being managed by people who understand exactly what it can do. Trump wants to exploit vacancies. Alito may stay because he sees himself as necessary. Sotomayor's dissent shows the moral cost of the majority's choices. None of that is incidental. The point is not whether one justice has too much ego or another has too much outreach. The point is that a tiny insulated class can shape immigration, rights, and the terms of belonging while the public is invited to watch the personalities instead of the power. You've been listening to Systemic Error. Thanks to Ross Story for today's article, with the automated voice of John. Thanks for listening.